Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. We have a special feature today. We have an actual, honest to gosh retainer agreement issued by a real law firm somewhere in the United States. We're not going to get into where. It was sent to us by someone we will call Mr. Anonymous, and it was issued by a firm that we will call the blah, blah, blah law firm. I kind of want to call them the probably not law firm because they don't sound great, but we're not gonna provide any identifying information for either the plaintiff or firm because I don't want to go to war unless I'm getting paid to go to war. People was like, "Oh, why didn't you fight with that guy?" Nobody's paying me to. What are you talking about? I don't. Anger's not free. All right, I'm going to read this one single provision from this retainer agreement into the video, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit because Mr. Anonymous contacted me and said, hey, this provision is in my retainer agreement. What do you think of it? And my immediate response was, I have concerns. I have many, many, many concerns about this provision. So let's read it. Bold letters, fee arrangement. Text of the clause here. We will undertake this representation for 33% contingency to retain the blah, blah, blah law firm. We will undertake this representation for 33% contingency to retain the blah, blah, blah law firm. Okay. That's an odd and awkward sentence to open a... Okay. Moving on. Representation concludes when one of the following occurs. 1, both parties agree to a settlement. I'd like to see some language about enforcing the settlement, collecting, but okay. 2, the firm has completed the pre-litigation. All right. Or 3, the client and the former employer are at an impasse. Oh, that's broad. Oh, but they go on. They define an impasse. An impasse includes both parties being, 1, both parties being unable to agree on a settlement amount. All right. 2, the former employer refusing to do a settlement negotiation. Okay. Or 3, the former employer refusing to do a mediation. The firm will work in good faith to attempt an impasse is not reached. Oh my. That's a sentence. That's a sentence that a professional law firm put in its retainer agreement. The firm will work in good faith to attempt an impasse is not reached, but is not responsible if the pre-litigation results in an impasse. All right. So we're not going to make any more jabs at the grammar. Because for all we know, these are humans trying their best to help people. We are going to take issue with some of the language here because this is essentially a clause purely built for settlement talks. But in my opinion, it's dressed up a little bit to make it sound like they're doing more than trying to settle your case, right? But the reality is, I mean, let's look at the impasse. What is an impasse? If the client and the former employer are at an impasse, that basically means 1, you won't agree on a settlement amount, right? So that's every single case. There's going to be a period of time where you're not going to agree on a settlement amount. 2, the former employer refusing to do a settlement negotiation. So all the employer has to do is say, nah, and this firm just quits. Wild. 3, the former employer refusing to do a mediation. Okay. So you hire a firm, you go through all the process, you get your case onboarded, you intake, you invest time in this law firm. They call up the employer. They say, hey, we should talk settlement. Employer says, nah. This firm calls you up and says, hey, they don't want to talk settlement. We're done. Well, that is how they define an impasse here, right? By the same token, the firm calls up the employer's attorney and says, hey, we should schedule a mediation. And the firm's attorney says, No, we're good. Well, we tried, right? That's what this is. This firm is essentially representing we tried, right? I mean, we tried, right? Or even item 1, defining an impasse. Both parties are unable to agree on a settlement amount. You as plaintiff is like, well, listen, I would like $80,000 for my case. And the employer says, I'll give you 5. This firm goes to the employer and says, well, we need you to come up. No. Okay. The firm goes to you and says, hey, we need you to come down. You say, no. Well, we've met condition 1 for what an impasse is under this retainer agreement. You've been unable to agree on a settlement amount. So this firm's like, we out. Whoa. Fascinating, right? Now, if you just want someone to make a call and flip your case for a settlement, if that's what you're looking for, this is a good clause. And as long as they're upfront that that's what they're doing, I take no issue with it. I mean, listen, it's a bit aggressive. This is 33% essentially for like making a call, maybe at most attending a mediation. That's how it looks here from what I'm reading, which is the lot for a call, depending on what they get you, right? Now, as long as you're, as a client, aware of that, fine. If that's what you want, I would not substitute my judgment for yours. You might just want what you want. And I always talk about, when I talk about attorneys flipping cases, we have videos on the channel about case flippers. They're not always bad. They help a lot of people who might not otherwise be helped. There's a lot of people who have cases that might not be worth that much, and case flippers can get them 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 grand, right? Like, that's a reality. But the problem with case flippers and the problem with this retainer is very rapidly, blah, blah, blah firm is going to get a reputation with defense counsel. And it's going to be a pretty wild one, because here's what defense counsel is going to take away from this whole thing. Hey, I've dealt with this firm 5 times, and every time I tell them I'm not going to give you what you want, they just drop the case. So let's say defense counsel has an attorney, has a firm, just got hired by a new employer, and the employer cuts them a big check, like 20 grand. Nothing huge for defense counsel, but, like a starter. Hey, we got a case going. We're just going to give you a starter retainer, see what you can do with it. Like, we haven't worked with you before. Defense counsel sees a case from blah, blah, blah firm come in. Defense counsel knows blah, blah, blah firm dumps every case that doesn't settle. Defense counsel wants to look like a tough guy or a tough woman and says, hey, blah, blah, blah firm, give you $1, not a penny more. Because we tough like that. We tough defense counsel, right? And here's what's going to happen. Blah, blah, blah firm's going to be like, well, no, we're not going to take $1. Our client won't take $1. Our client wants 80 grand. And defense firm's like, yeah, and we're not going to give 80 grand. Guess we're at an impasse. And blah, blah, blah firm's going to be like, oh, yeah, I guess we are. Do you want to go to a mediation? Defense counsel will be like, I sure don't. I don't want to go to a mediation one bit. You better hurry up and drop this case so I look like a badass. And blah, blah, blah firm's going to sit there and be like, well, I guess that's what we do. We drop cases when they won't settle. So we've met not one, but multiple components, multiple elements of an impasse in our own retainer agreement, right? We've hit impasse at a variety of different ways. They won't agree on a settlement agreement. Attorneys won't negotiate anymore with us, and they won't go to mediation. So that's all 3 of the impasse conditions in the retainer agreement. So we can just drop this case. And they probably will. Because why would they draft this agreement giving them that right if they didn't intend to drop cases that don't settle? So you got a client who just had their case dropped by an attorney, making it harder for them to find attorneys in the future, also making them seem like they're in a weaker position because now their attorney's just dumping them. When you're changing attorneys, it doesn't always make you seem like you're in a weaker position, but like these are not great optics, the way this would be going down in this hypothetical, right? How does defense counsel fare in this? Well, defense counsel, with that $20,000 check sitting in her or his bank account, goes back to the employer's like, hey, I billed $8 grand and I got rid of this case for you. I'm a star. They were terrified of me. I walked in to that Zoom call, and I'm pretty sure this plaintiff's attorney just weed himself. And I told him, $1. That's all you get. $1. And he dumped the case on the spot because I'm ferocious, right? And what is defense counsel now? Defense counsel is getting another check. Next time that employer has a case, defense counsel is getting that job because defense counsel has proof of concept. Defense counsel has been a star, right? So you actually have this firm that you hired to help you that is running around teaching defense attorneys they can look really impressive by refusing to negotiate with this firm that you hired. Not the best dynamic to be engendering if you want to get people. Seriously? Okay, come here. It's not the best, right? It's not the best. The next thing you got to think about, defense counsel sees a really good case come in the door, right? Defense counsel's like, oh, blah, blah, blah firm signed up a whale. This case is worth millions. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to, oh, it's blah, blah, blah firm. So they're going to pressure their client because they're just settlement artists. So I bet you I could settle this 7-figure giant of a case. Like, think like the worst of the worst. Think like active hate crimes, physical assaults, like the big cases, right? Not very sad. No one's excited to see a big case because big cases are horrific, generally speaking. She's got thoughts. She's got thoughts about big cases. So defense counsel sees blah, blah, blah firm walk in with a big case. Blah, blah, blah firm reaches out. Defense counsel's like, yeah, I'd give you 20 grand. And blah, blah, blah firm's like, no, we're demanding $1 million. Defense counsel's like, sure, but you could have a third of 20 grand or you could have nothing because I'm not going to give you $1 million and I'm not going to agree to mediation. So you could pressure your client to take 20 grand, which is the only way you're going to see a penny out of this, blah, blah, blah firm. Or you could dump this case because that's what you do. We all know that's what you do because it's all you ever do. You don't go to trial because you have a retainer like this that's not built for going to trial, right? And then what is big old defense counsel doing? He's letting the plaintiff's attorney lean on the plaintiff to do her or his job for them. Right? Because plaintiff's counsel could have $0 and dump the case, or could lean on the plaintiff and say, listen, I know we put in that demand for $1 million, but you're going to have to come down if you want a settlement. You're going to have to come down. Plaintiff's like, okay, we knew that. I was willing to come down to 800K. And blah, blah, blah. Firm's like, here, I'm thinking 20 grand. I think you should come down to 20 grand. Why? Plaintiff's like, why? Why would I do that? Because listen. I looked at your case. It's not as good as I thought. What do you mean? You liked my case a lot. We put it in demand for $1 million. You didn't say anything to me about that demand. Yeah, I don't. I think you should take 20. Why? Why are they selling their client on the river? Because if they dump the case, they get $0. If they settle the case, they get a third. What do they settle? So if they settle for 20 grand, I mean, what do they get? I should know this stuff. Just under 7 grand, right? So they can have 7 grand for 2 hours of work, or they can have nothing. And some other firm that's actually going to fight this case and actually going to file it will end up getting everything. We'll get their percentage, and the plaintiff will get money, presumably, because it sounds like a really good case, right? Or even worse, this firm dumps the 7-figure case. Plaintiff gets disheartened, maybe has a few calls, but attorneys are reluctant to take on a case that another attorney dumped like that. Sometimes law firms will be like, listen, and I've got videos about this. Law firms will be like, listen, I don't know what happened with you and this other attorney, but like, I don't know. You've been running through attorneys pretty quick. That attorney only lasted 2 weeks with you. What are you doing? What's going on? And they might think there's something wrong with the plaintiff or something the plaintiff's hiding, then it might be hard to get representation. So there's a lot of harm that could be done by this firm, and its somewhat weak grasp of the finer points of grammar, and its strange settlement only, like, dressed up retainer clause. Right? I mean, if word of this kind of retainer gets out, and it will, because a firm like this is doing volume, because, you know, they've got to. They're not maxing. They're not out there running 20 cases a year for max value. They're out there running, 100, 200, whatever they can get, whatever they can get, because they got to settle a bunch of cases. And a lot of these cases, defense terms are just gonna be like, nah, file it. We'll see you in court. Listen, they might settle it later, but they're gonna know. You just say file it, and these people go away. So this firm's only getting unpaid on probably a small percentage of the cases it brings. So they bring in volume. So they're out there. They're out there as a known quantity as settlement artists. And I don't know if blah, blah, blah firm only has this retainer agreement that they issue, or if they issue like a different retainer agreement to clients that they want to take a litigation. I don't know that. I'm just saying that if my family came home with this retainer agreement and they were like, hey, I hired this attorney, my response would be, the fuck you did? What are you talking about? Well, first off, yeah, I'm never going to represent you because we're family, but why wouldn't you ask me to read the retainer agreement for you? And no offense, Mr. Anonymous, I'm not saying you're a moron, but in this scenario, my family didn't have me read the retainer agreement, so that individual would be a moron, right? And so, Mr. Anonymous, when I say that this clause makes me uncomfortable, it only makes me uncomfortable if you didn't know exactly what you were getting. If this is what you wanted, if you just wanted a settlement artist to take a crack at flipping your case for an easy settlement, then that's cool. You negotiated well, you got what you wanted. Huzzah! Right? If they sold you a bill of goods that wasn't really in line with what you got here, then I am fighting mad. Like, this is not a particularly useful retainer for the client, in my opinion. I think a lot of damage can be done here. I would be tempted to harm. I would be tempted to harm this firm if they were within arm's reach. I think it's time for me to sign off. Remember, comment down below if you have follow-up questions. Like and subscribe if this video was helpful. It helps me to help more people just like you. Not everybody works. No, everybody does work. Just about everybody works. Not everybody wins. People who sign this retainer agreement have a slightly less likely chance of winning, in my opinion. And I'm sorry to say that, Mr. Anonymous. I know you are a smart person fighting an unfamiliar fight. I just don't like this clause in your retainer. And it frustrates me, and I'm going to stop talking about it.